Hey guys, it's Dr. Jason Torado. We're back. It's Mindset Monday. Hope everybody's having a great beginning of the week. So, what I want to talk to you today about is reaching your goals and living your dreams in the shortest amount of time, right? And what I really want to talk about is how to do that with the least amount of effort. Everybody wants to reach their goals with the least amount of effort. But what I wanted to really talk to you about is something that I discovered. What I really finally discovered, obviously, with the help of one of my six-figure a month practice students, some doctors will become wildly successful in our six-figure a month program, while other doctors just don't. I mean, they just don't have that level of success. So I'd like to think that they all become very successful, and a lot of them do become successful. But there are really some doctors that just really get it. They stick to the principles. They become very, very successful in the program. Whereas there are some other doctors that do well, but they just don't reach that high level of success like some of these other doctors do. And so I want to share with you in just a moment exactly how that happens. And if you can make like just an infinitely small change, the changes that I'm going to suggest to you, that I promise you, if you listen carefully, your practice is really, really going to, it's going to move, it's really going to move the needle, and your practice and maybe even your life is going to change forever. So I want you to listen up. So the first thing that you have to deal with is you got to start with the most obvious thing. And that is, I mean, did you reach your goals last year? Right? Did you? And are you reaching your goals now? But a lot of people haven't, reached their last, their goals last year. And I'm sure there's probably a lot of you that are out there right now that are listening to this probably haven't reached their goals, and you're probably, maybe you don't want to admit it to, or maybe you're looking at your this video right now and you're like, you got this blank stare. You're like, I didn't hit my goals. And so the question is, why? Like, why didn't you hit your goals last year? I bet that some of you probably didn't have clear goals. And I know you've heard about, it's important to have clear and smart goals and things like that. But I'm going to be honest, if you had goals, then and you didn't reach them, then more than likely they weren't clearly defined. They just weren't. Or maybe you didn't even write them down. Or maybe you did write them down, but you wrote down something that was really vague. And maybe you wrote them down, or maybe you thought about it, but you didn't really put down clear action steps to really achieve any of those goals. Or maybe you did put down those action steps, but you know what? You didn't really look at them weekly, monthly, and you didn't really follow them, right? So why didn't you do that? You know you're supposed to do that. Well, look, everybody's got dreams. I mean, I've had dreams, I've had goals my entire life, and I'm sure that a lot of people have goals and they've got dreams, and everybody daydreams, right? You got to daydream, otherwise you're not human. But passing thoughts of all these great things, that you'd like to get out of your practice or even out of your life. And like, everybody's got these great ideas of what their practice should look like. But that's usually as far as most people ever get, unfortunately, is they just kind of daydream, and unfortunately daydreams, that doesn't move the needle. It just doesn't. It does not get you to where you want to go. And neither does kind of like hoping or wishing. Praying is effective, right? But being diligent is really important. God wants us to be diligent with our thoughts. In other words, he wants us to take action. And he also wants us to be smart, right? So being diligent is being smart. So you don't want to chop down a tree with a hammer. You want to chop down a tree with a chainsaw. That's what he means about being diligent in Proverbs. So, but again, wishing for things to happen isn't going to work. And, saying positive affirmations and things like that every single day in the mirror, which, they tell you it's going to work, like, that doesn't work either. That's just a waste of time. Honestly, affirmations and things like that, I believe that they really are a waste of time. Now, don't get me wrong. I think you should have positive things going into your brain, but I've never really seen affirmations really pan out, at least for me. So there's really a world of difference between having, affirmations, and having like thoughts of what you want to do. But there's a difference between that and actually writing down your goals in detailed action steps. And look, this isn't about goal making. That's not what this today's mindset is going to be about. This is really about mindset. But look, I've made it my life's journey is to really figure out why some guys are successful and why some other people are not successful. Like, really, that's what I want to do. And most importantly, why these super successful people, why do they become successful? Why do they become successful and stay successful? Like, there are some guys that have success, like they touch upon success from now and then, but then they just kind of fall back to where they were before, right? It's like people that win the lottery, they win a couple $1 million, and then you look them up maybe 3-4 years later, and they're busted broke to back to where they were all over again. Like, why is it? And I've met tons of chiropractors, and I found that the super duper successful ones that remain successful, well, they all have one thing in common. One thing is really different that kind of separates them from all the other chiropractors out there. And I think it's that this one thing, and I'm going to tell you about it in a second, is what really leads them to a very, very successful practice and a very successful career. And they can be successful in just about anything that they do because they know how to do this one thing. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't mean everything that they do, right? They can't become a pro swimmer, right? Maybe they don't have the body for it, right? I get that. Maybe they can't be a pro basketball player because they're not 7 foot tall. So they can't be successful at everything that they do. But for the most part, these doctors that are super successful, I believe, can be super successful at anything that they do, mostly within limitations, because they really, really know how to do this one thing. And I'll tell you something, it's not anything that anybody else can't do, okay? It's not anything, unique or spectacular, but yet this one thing that they do produces constantly good results for them every single time. And it's not really something that's difficult to do. And it's not out of reach, like I said. Yet it just really makes results very, very attainable and makes these chiropractors look almost like superhuman sometimes, like spectacular doctors. And so when you see what they've accomplished, you think, man, these chiropractors are something else. These guys are the true 1%ers. They must have some type of like miracle, magical power, but they don't. I mean, they just don't. And you might think that they have more God-given talent, but they don't have more God-given talent. They don't have more talent than you do. But the best part is that, look, it's not a special gift. It's not some type of a skill or some type of aptitude. You don't even have to be smart. You don't got to be like me, sexy and good looking. Like, you don't. It might help, but you don't have to be super charismatic. But you can even be well below average. And more than likely, I'm going to tell you something. A lot of these guys that were very, very successful, I knew a lot of these guys in school. These guys were not in the A club or the B club. These guys were in the C club and the D club. Okay. I don't know what's so unusual about that. The fact that they were in the D club, or the fact that there really was a C and a D club in chiropractic college, and I was in it. I wasn't the president, but I was in it. So look, and I've known about this one trait for a very, very long time. But a couple of weeks ago, and I've always known this, even when I started my practice, right? It's this knowing this has always been present, but literally it wasn't until a few years ago where it kind of all came together and it really started making a lot of sense to me. And so here's how it happened. A couple weeks ago, I was doing a phone consultation with one of my 6-figure a month clients, Brian. And before we started getting into it, we were talking about just this. We were talking about what makes chiropractors successful and what makes other chiropractors not so successful. And even though the same chiropractor could be you could have one chiropractor on one side of the town, another chiropractor on the other side of the town. They could be using the exact same marketing materials. They could even have the same procedures that that they use inside their practice, but yet they could have completely different practices. One guy could be completely successful. The other guy is not going to be completely successful. And I found that there's one thing that really, really, really separates these doctors. And so when I was talking to Brian, he had told me, he's like, Jay, the only big difference between successful and unsuccessful chiropractors is that successful chiropractors are really chiropractors, that are willing to do things that unsuccessful chiropractors aren't willing to do. Let me repeat that. He said that the successful chiropractors are willing to do the things that the unsuccessful chiropractors aren't willing to do. Now, don't get me wrong. Um, I'm not talking about illegal things, okay?